I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about how to play Heroscape in under 10 minutes. It only took making like 18 videos on the subject. First things first, you're going to need a map. Now there's two ways that you can go about procuring a map. On Heroscapers.org, there's almost 20 years worth of competitive maps that have been used in tournaments. They're play tested, they're super balanced. They'll be great for playing the game. Or you can let loose, have a little bit of fun like my girlfriend and I did here and build this and just have a great time. Either way works. Next, you're gonna need to assemble your armies. There's two main ways that people assemble their armies when they play Heroscape. Both methods start at determining how many points you want your army to be. Simply put, the maximum number of points determines how powerful your armies can be. So a 500 point army is going to be weaker than a 1000 point army. You and your opponent agree on how many points you would like to play up to, and then you can either draft your army or you can build it in advance. Drafting an army is simple. You and your opponent or opponents determines who goes first, who goes second, etc. And then you just start by picking cards. You'll notice that the bottom of every card has a point value. This is how much that card is worth. So more powerful units will be worth more points and less powerful units will be worth less points. You and your opponents will go back and forth like this until you have fulfilled your point totals. And if you guys agree on like 500 points and you hit 500 points after drafting like 3 units and then your opponents still have time to go, then they go back and forth, whatever, until they max out. The other way is to build an army in advance, and this is typically what you'll see at most tournaments. It just makes sense. You can pre-use from your own collection and things don't get messy. It's pretty simple. You just go through your collection and you build up to the point value that's agreed upon. Now there's a ton of different ways to build an army. There's lots of fun tournament formats that can restrict what sort of armies you play, but there are 4 main classifications of Heroscape units. There are heroes, there are squads, there are uniques, and there are commons. Heroes, simply put, 1 unit, 1 figure. That figure will typically have more than 1 life point, which means they can sustain more wounds before they are destroyed. We'll elaborate more on that a little bit later. Squads typically have between 2 and 4 figures, and they usually only have 1 life. So if they take 1 wound, that figure is removed from the board. Just the figure, not the unit. There's certain advantages that squads have over heroes, but we'll get to that later. The unique designation means you can only have 1 copy of that unit in your army. Commons, on the other hand, lets you have as many as you can possibly field and still hit the point value. There's also uncommon units, but that's probably another video. Now that we've cleared up those bases, there are 5 main stats that you have to worry about when selecting your army. As we mentioned, there's life points, which heroes have typically between 2 and like 8. Of course, there are outliers on either side. And squad figures have 1. Once again, that doesn't mean that if a squad unit takes a wound, the entire squad is gone. It just means 1 figure's gone. But what do I mean by wounds? Well, we'll get to that when we cover how the actual gameplay works. Next, you have movement. That determines how many hexes a particular figure can move. Next is range. Once again, kind of self-explanatory. That determines how many hexes away a unit can attack. So if a unit has a range of 9, that means they can attack any figure that's within 9 hexes. Finally, there's attack and defense. And this is slightly teasing how the game actually plays. The attack and defense scores determine how many dice you roll when either attacking or defending. So if a unit has an attack of like 3, that means that when you attack another figure, you roll 3 dice. If a unit has a defense of 3, that means that figure rolls 3 dice when they're attacked.
Wait, was that the same footage?
Units also have a bunch of special abilities, but that would be really complicated and really extend the length of this video. Special abilities are what give this very simple game depth and the reason why the community has kept it alive for so long and the reason why it's getting a reboot. Now that we've gone over the map and the armies, let's talk about how to actually play this game. But before we get into actually playing our game, we need to assemble a few materials. First and foremost, you're going to need 1 d20 and then your attack and defense die. In the first version of Heroscape, these were 2 separate sets of dice, but then they combined them in later prints. You'll also need your order markers. There's 4 of these, and I'll explain what they do in just a sec. And finally, you'll need wound markers, which show how many wounds your heroes get. The game of Heroscape is broken up into turns and rounds. Every round has 3 turns, and every game has as many rounds as you want. Although some of the printed scenarios have round limits, but I don't know anyone who plays with those. A round works as follows. You and your opponent first both place your order markers on your units. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, your order markers are listed 1, 2, 3, and X. This means that if you put your 1 order marker on Nigok-Sa, that means that Nigok-Sa is going to go on the first turn. Remember, 3 turns make up a round. If I put the 2nd order marker on my Roman legionaries, that means they go on the 2nd turn of the round. And if I put my number 3 marker on Marcus Decimus Gladius, that means he goes 3rd in the round. The X marker is a decoy marker, which is just to throw off your opponent. Once you and your opponent, or your opponents, place your order markers, you're going to roll the d20s. Whoever rolls the higher number on the d20 goes first. Then the second highest goes next, and then you get the idea. That player is going to reveal their first order marker. So in my case, it'll be on Nigok-Sa. I reveal the order marker, and then I can move up to 5 spaces because that's his movement stat. If I'm not in range to attack any of Emily's figures, then that's the end of my turn. She'll then reveal her number 1 order marker, move her number 1 figure, and then it'll go back to me. I reveal my turn 2 order marker, so in this case, the Roman legionaries, and then I move them up to 4 spaces, and then if they're in range of anyone, they can attack. If not, then it'll be Emily's turn. She'll do her number 2. You get the idea. Hello, Editor Austin here. Just to clarify, I could move and attack with all 4 Romans in that squad. The reason you choose a squad card is because you get to move 4 figures and attack with 4 figures in a single turn. That's their benefit. Back to the video. But what happens if my legionaries are within range of one of her units? Let's just say for this example, I have a legionary that's within range of one of her Omnicron snipers and I want to attack it. The procedure here is simple. My legionaries have an attack of 3, which means I roll 3 attack dice. Those are going to result in either a skull, a shield, or a blank. Although I have these super cool Einar dice, so one of the blanks is an Einar face, but that's for another video. If I roll a skull, that counts as a hit. If I roll a shield, a blank, or the Einar dice in this example, that counts as a miss. Emily's Omnicron snipers have a defense of 3, which means she gets to roll 3 dice in defense. The attacker always rolls dice before the defender, because if the attacker rolls all blanks, then the defender doesn't need to roll any dice. Some exceptions do apply. Let's say in this example, my legionaries roll 2 skulls, and her Omnicron snipers roll 1 shield. 2 skulls is more than 1 shield. Quick maths. Therefore, 1 wound is inflicted on the Omnicron snipers. Now, because they're a squad unit, that means that that figure is destroyed. Emphasis on figure. She still has 2 more figures of Omnicron snipers left in this unit. So when it's their turn, she can still move them and do all their stuff. Now, before I go, there are 2 quick caveats that I have to go over with regards to terrain and how it affects the game. You'll notice in this map, there's a little bit of height. There's a little bit of this mountain kind of in between our start zones. Any unit that has height over another unit gets to roll another attack die. So in the previous example, if my Roman legionary was above her Omnicron sniper, instead of rolling 3 dice to attack, I'd roll 4. Consequently, if her Omnicron sniper was higher than my Roman legionary, then that means she rolls 4 defense die rather than 3. You'll also notice there's a lot of water on this map. If a figure moves and they land into a water space, that is the end of their movement for their turn. If they're in a water space and they try to move to another water space, they only get a movement of 1. That's why I have in this map, the 2 start zones are pretty close, but they're separated by water. And finally, if you're doing a ranged attack, you have to make sure that your opponent is within line of sight. So that means you have to get down, look from the perspective of your figure, and see if they can see the figure that they're attacking. So in this case, Emily's Omnicron sniper can clearly see my legionary, so she can attack it. But in this case, the glacier blocks line of sight from the Omnicron sniper to the legionary, so she can't attack. And that's pretty much everything you need to know on how to play Heroscape. It's a super simple game that's very easy to pick up, but there's a lot of layers, especially in how units synergize with each other and all sorts of special abilities. But that's for another video. Let me know if I missed anything or if you have any questions, drop a comment below. And if you saw all this and it gets you jazzed for the Age of Annihilation relaunch and you haven't bought it yet, you should totally click the link in the description below. It's an affiliate link, so I get a little bit of change if you decide to buy it. I'd really appreciate it. And finally, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you should click right here to see all of the videos that I've made on this recently resuscitated war game. That's pretty much it for today. And thank you so much for watching. Ah.